One Piece has the worst possible first impression if you're new. It's huge, loud, overhyped, and it comes with that annoying little threat hanging over your head like, trust me bro, it gets good around episode whatever, which is exactly how people get sent into a 1,000-episode hostage situation. So the fast way to understand it is not memorizing islands, power systems, or every guy with a weird laugh. It's one chain of ideas, and once that clicks, the whole monster suddenly has a skeleton. At the center of that skeleton is one dead man and one very alive idiot, Galdi. Roger leaves behind the One Piece treasure, and that single fact kicks off the Great Pirate Era, because apparently nothing motivates humanity like the possibility of free money and a legendary title. Then in walks Monkey D. Luffy, wearing a straw hat and the expression of someone who absolutely would press the red button just to see what happens, and he decides he's going to become Pirate King. That sounds simple, almost too simple, until you realize his dream doesn't just point him toward treasure, it points him straight into the biggest, meanest systems in the world. And that's the first thing people miss. Luffy is not interesting because he's complicated. He's interesting because he's terrifyingly direct. Put him in front of a locked door, a crooked ruler, a giant institution, or some smug authority figure hiding behind rules, and his response is basically the same every time. That shouldn't be there, so I'm going through it. He moves through the story like a human crowbar, and that's why One Piece starts feeling less like random pirate adventures, and more like watching one freedom-obsessed wrecking ball bounce into structures that really don't want to be touched, which raises the obvious question of who's actually trying to keep the world in a cage. That's where the story gets bigger than treasure hunting. The world isn't just pirates on boats, because there are power blocks everywhere. The world government, marines, the old warlord system as part of the world's balance, and other giant pirate forces all pressing against each other. So every time Luffy sails toward his dream, he's not drifting through empty ocean, he's cutting across a map already owned, monitored, and controlled by people with uniforms, titles, and enough power to make ordinary lives very small. The Grand Line matters because it isn't just the route to the One Piece treasure. It's the road where all of that pressure crashes together, and Luffy is dumb enough, or pure enough, to keep smiling and walking forward anyway. That's also why the Straw Hat Pirates matter so much. If this were only Luffy sprinting at the horizon by himself, it'd be fun for 5 minutes and then emotionally bankrupt, like eating frosting with a spoon. The crew turns the story into something human, because they don't just fill seats on a ship, they give the journey weight. Each one brings a dream, a wound, and a reason this adventure isn't just about finding treasure. And every time someone chooses to stand beside Luffy, the story quietly asks a bigger question. What kind of person makes other broken people believe they can still move forward? And that question is the real trap. You think One Piece is about a loud pirate chasing a prize at the end of the sea. Then the series starts revealing that the voyage keeps colliding with oppression, corruption, and entire systems built to decide who gets to live freely and who doesn't. That's the head fake. The treasure hunt is real. The Pirate King title is real. The Grand Line is real. But the thing powering all of it is that Luffy keeps showing up wherever people have been taught to lower their heads, and he does not lower his. If that basic engine already makes more sense than the giant blur people usually dump on you, because once the world starts pushing back, One Piece stops being the long pirate anime and starts becoming a war over who gets to define freedom. And that's where the map gets mean. The Grand Line isn't just a long road with weirder weather and louder idiots on it. It sits inside a world already chopped up by power, rules, and people with uniforms who swear they're protecting order while pirates, rulers, and other heavy hitters all pull in different directions. So every time Luffy lands somewhere new, he's not just visiting another island for vibes. He's walking into somebody else's cage, and that means the adventure keeps turning into a fight over who's allowed to live free. That matters because One Piece gets huge for a reason. The world is built so that freedom is expensive, secrets stay buried, and anyone who asks the wrong question tends to make very powerful enemies. What looks like a goofy trip for treasure keeps revealing bigger machinery behind it, like somebody pulled back a curtain and there's an entire government-sized boot hovering over half the planet. So the real pressure isn't, can Luffy keep sailing? It's what happens when a guy who never bows keeps crashing into a world designed to make everyone bow. And that problem gets way too big for one rubber menace to handle alone. Which is why the crew isn't side decoration. The Straw Hat Pirates are the engine. Luffy doesn't collect people like trading cards because the plot said he needed a party. People join because they hit a wall, they've got a dream that's been stepped on, and this grinning lunatic shows up acting like impossible is a suggestion. That changes the shape of the whole story, because now the goal isn't just one boy chasing the Pirate King title across the sea. Now it's a moving pile of promises, and every new crewmate turns the ship into a little floating rebellion with worse table manners. The The smart shortcut is to stop asking, who's strongest? And ask, what does each person want badly enough to risk following Luffy for it? That's the trick. The Straw Hats matter because they're dream-driven allies, not random companions filling empty chairs in the background while the main character hogs the camera like a sleep-deprived theater kid. Every time someone joins, the emotional stakes jump, because the mission quietly expands from finding one piece to protecting the people who finally found a place to belong, which sounds sweet until the world notices and starts aiming at the whole crew instead of just the captain. And once that happens, every obstacle gets teeth. A rough island stop isn't just a detour anymore. It can threaten someone's dream, someone's trust, or the fragile little family these idiots built in the middle of a world that profits from keeping people divided. That's why fans get so attached. Under all the absurd faces, giant personalities, and pirate nonsense, the Straw Hats are basically a bunch of wounded ambitions held together by loyalty, bad decisions, and one captain who treats absolutely not like a warm-up line. If that's the part of One Piece that's starting to click for you, subscribe, because the world they're sailing into only gets bigger, uglier, and way more interesting once those bonds are strong enough to be used against them. So here's the fast version you actually need in your head moving forward. One Piece works because two forces keep colliding: a massive world full of factions, rules, and hidden history, and a crew built out of people who refuse to let their dreams die quietly. Luffy is the spark, but the Straw Hats are what make the fire spread. And that raises the next ugly question. If this crew keeps growing into something the world can't comfortably ignore, what exactly is the world so desperate to protect from them? That's when One Piece stops being some goofy pirate road trip and starts showing its teeth. The crew keeps arriving at new places, expecting another weird island problem, and instead they keep finding the same stink in different clothes. Somebody powerful is squeezing ordinary people, somebody higher up is pretending not to see it, and somebody's life has already been ruined by the time Luffy gets there. So the scale upgrades without needing a lecture, because every local mess starts pointing to a bigger machine. And now the question isn't just whether the Straw Hats can leave alive, but how many times they can punch a hole in the world before the world punches back harder. That's the clean lens, by the way, the shortcut that makes this monster of a series suddenly feel normal-sized. They arrive somewhere new, they meet the people hurting, they figure out who's causing it, fists start flying, and when they leave, the island is changed, but the mystery is bigger. It's basically emotional pest control with pirates. Once you see that pattern, the length gets way less scary, because you're not trying to memorize 1,000 events anymore. You're watching one engine keep revealing a larger truth, and that larger truth keeps asking who really gets to be free in this world. And the smart part is that the pattern never stays small for long. A problem that looks local turns out to be tied to a larger power. Then that power connects to the world government. Then suddenly the crew isn't just helping strangers anymore. They're stepping on the toes of people who treat the whole world like office property. That shift matters because it changes what Luffy means. At first, he looks like a chaos goblin in sandals chasing the Pirate King title because his brain is made of sunshine and bad decisions. But the more pressure the world puts on people, the clearer it gets that his real danger is simple. He keeps acting like no one has the right to own another person's future, which is exactly the kind of idea powerful systems hate like poison. That's also why the Straw Hats matter so much more than cool party members. They're not there to fill seats on a ship and yell attack names. Every time one of them chooses to stay with Luffy, the story quietly says this journey is worth more than money, status, or the safe, boring life the world tries to hand out in a paper bag. If you've ever looked at this giant series and thought, I am not signing a multi-year contract with pirate homework, hit like here, because this is the part that converts people. The crew gives the whole thing a heartbeat, and once the heartbeat is there, every new threat feels personal instead of just loud. So the series keeps doing this beautiful, evil trick. You get adventure, humor, strange islands, weird powers, people eating devil fruits and paying for it with normal human swimming privileges, and right when you settle into that fun, the floor drops out and you realize the jokes are attached to real pain. Then the fights land harder because they're not just about winning. They're about whether someone gets their life back, whether a place stays broken, whether the people in charge get to keep calling cruelty order, and each answer pushes the Straw Hats closer to the center of something much older and much uglier than a treasure hunt. That's the final reason. One Piece hooks people so hard. All the best parts feed the same forward motion. The adventure gets you moving. The crew gets you attached. The world makes you suspicious. The mysteries keep you leaning in. And the promise of the One Piece treasure hangs over everything like the world's biggest locked door. You're not just watching random islands happen. You're watching one long collision between a boy chasing the Pirate King dream, a crew refusing to give up on their own dreams, and a world that seems deeply uncomfortable with what might happen if the truth ever fully comes out. So if you wanted the fastest way to understand One Piece, that's really it. It's not a giant blur, and it's definitely not just too long. It's a repeating adventure structure that keeps widening into a bigger conflict, carried by Luffy, the Straw Hat Pirates, the Grand Line, Devil Fruits, the world government, and the giant unanswered promise of the One Piece itself. And if this finally made the series click instead of looking like an ocean-sized threat to your free time, subscribe and tell me what you want next. Luffy, the crew, the Grand Line, or the big mysteries, because now you've got the map, and the whole point of One Piece is that the map only gets more dangerous from here.